Welcome to Three Devs and a Maybe, the podcast series for beginner web developers and general web enthusiasts. Now, introducing your show hosts, Michael Budd, Fraser Hart, Lewis Keynes, and Ed Mann.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Three Devs and a Maybe. My name's Ed Mann, and today we're very lucky to be joined by I can't think of a good name. What was it like? What was yours? Delectable last week, a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. By the Fraser Hart.
Thank you.
And the Michael Budd.
I was hoping I was going to get cuddly or something like that. That would have been nice.
The cuddly Fraser Hart.
Yeah,
and the,
I'll take that.
And I'm trying to think of the impressionable Michael Budd.
Yeah.
I like it. There we go. How are you guys doing? That's
Very
a really
well.
bad intro. Yeah, nice one. Thank you, Fraser, for that, because it's a bad intro again where I just lay it out, how is everyone doing? I should be like, Fraser, how was your week?
Was that the question, or was that saying you should have said that?
I should have said that's true as well. This is a great start to an episode. Yeah, Fraser, how has your week been?
My week has been really good fun. I was up in Newcastle on Friday. I don't know if I mentioned that to you guys on a work event.
No. Oh, is this the new because they've just released? They've got a new building, haven't you? There.
Yeah, we just opened an office up in Newcastle. The management took all the London staff up to Newcastle to basically check out the new office, and they paid for us a night out in Newcastle, and it was a very drunken and debaucherous weekend, to be honest with you. It was good fun though. So while they were up in Newcastle, the management went up a day before because they held like a launch event for the Newcastle office. So they invited local business people and people from the council and all that kind of stuff along. So I don't know if I mentioned that we'd been working on this project where we were dealing with like Raspberry Pis, and we'd written some algorithms so that we could use Bluetooth beacons to determine where people are in an enclosed space using. Did I mention that?
That sounded so cool.
Yeah, it was really, really cool. Unfortunately, the demo didn't go too well, or the kind of presentation. The party went really, really well because I think there was free booze and stuff. But basically, the Raspberry Pis, about half a day before we switched them on, we'd only kind of tested them with 6 beacons, and there was going to be 100 beacons in there.
Wow, that's a lot of beacons.
Exactly, yeah. And we didn't have access to the space that they'd all be running in either until maybe about an hour before the event. So it was a little bit of a sketchy kind of, let's turn these things on and hope they work. But anyway, about not even 6 hours, about half a day before we actually kind of switched them on for the event, we discovered that there was a bit of a memory leak. Well, I was using a promise library in Node that basically whenever the promise was unresolved, it didn't dispose of it properly. So kind of it was building up all this memory. And for something like a Raspberry Pi that doesn't have a lot of memory anyway, it basically very quickly overwhelmed the Raspberry Pi. So we had to make some changes to the code and stuff. And it turned out that the original implementation that we needed to use the promise library for, because we didn't actually need to get a response anymore. So we just kind of used standard HTTP requests. So we were sending those. So we cleared up the memory leak. But anyway, the Raspberry Pis basically didn't have enough power, or they couldn't cope with trying to send signals out for 100 beacons, so it very quickly fell over. Unfortunately, the demo, or the kind of the tech demo, didn't go very well. But yeah, the party was a bit of a success. But yeah, and had a Twitter feed that I built in Node, and that was working fine. But yeah, apart from that, it's been interesting. It's been good.
Oh, that's really good that they go to that effort to take all their staff up there and pay for a night out and stuff.
Yeah, it was really good because there's like 30 of us down in London, in the London office. They paid for us all a train up there and a hotel, and they rented out like the ground floor of some bar which had a bowling alley in it, and table football and
wow. All sorted out there then. That's
yeah,
brilliant.
It was fantastic, and there was a free bar as well. So I tried to make as much use of that as I could, but unfortunately, I can't really drink.
The drinking machine, Fraser.
Oh, I'm not even. I can't do it. So I think I had 3 beers on the train up because we were all drinking on the way up. One of the guys drank so much, like he's a really good drinker, and he got through like. He bought himself eight bottles of beer for the train journey up. And bear in mind, it's a 3-hour train journey from London to Newcastle. Wow. Yeah, so halfway through the journey, I looked across, and he was buying another one off the cart. So he got through like 8 bottles of beer, and then he was buying cans of Stella off the cart.
And that was pre-drinking before the even.
Exactly. So we got like the 2:00 train from London, and by 5:00 he was eight beers in or something like that, and then we got to the hotel, And then the guy that he was sharing the room with had a couple of beers as well. So he had one of those beers. So he had that one. and then we went to the office to kind of see the office, and there was a beer fridge there. He had another one there. So by the time he'd even got to the event, he'd had 10 beers.
Oh my God. How was he feeling? Was he still, could you still understand anything he said?
Because he was he's a very good drinker. I want to say very good drinker. Yeah, he's really good at drinking. So it just got, he drank, he kept drinking. He was going up to the bar and he was getting pints by like in twos for himself. And he ended up getting very, very drunk. And then he dropped a full pint glass on the bowling alley. You know how like bowling alleys are all like the wood is immaculate and all, all up and stuff. So he dropped a full pint over the bowling alley.
Oh, well, he left his mark, left his imprint.
May or may not have peed himself.
And that's now live on a podcast, and it's recorded.
Exactly. But that wasn't at the event. That was when he got back to the hotel and came looking for people to drink with in hotel rooms and stuff.
Because obviously, after the amount of drinking he'd done, he needed more.
Oh, exactly.
It makes complete logical sense.
Yeah, and he was escorted from the premises by bouncers as well.
Oh wow! That's just wow. He did it all.
I know. Yeah,
in one evening.
He had a fine, very fine job. But it was good fun. And that was completely away from. Yeah, might have just gone off on a tangent.
No, that's fine, man. No, I mean, with the promise stuff, then. So, had you kind of tested some of that stuff? Like, I suppose you couldn't really stress test it, could you, at all? It was
that's the thing, because we were running it with 6 beacons originally in the office when we were developing everything, so it was working fine with 6 beacons, but it was just when obviously you're increasing the load by 20 times, and couldn't deal with it. So we had 7 Raspberry Pis set up with Bluetooth detectors, and then I think 6 of those packed up, so we had 1.
How did you realise it was the Promise library? Was there a bit of debugging going on there, or did you kind of have an inkling that it could be something along those lines?
One of the guys up in Newcastle, he was doing all the stuff on he had all the Raspberry Pis up there, so he was doing all the stuff working on there. So we turned on with a few more beacons, and he noticed that a couple of them shut themselves down. So he was able to kind of detect it down to this Promise library, and he did a bit of research, and apparently there is an issue with, I don't know if it's specifically with that library that we were using, or if it's just with promises in general.
Because I suppose you can't, if it's an unresolved promise, it doesn't know yet.
Exactly.
This is the trouble. Like, it doesn't. You almost have to have like cleaning up, where it just goes through some garbage, collects a bunch.
Or have like a timeout on it or something.
That's it.
Because I guess the nature of promises is it's going to sit there and it's going to wait for a further instruction, either a success or a fail.
That's it. And then if you don't give it will just say, "I'm here still," and it's exactly memory and everything. Oh, that's a shame. So are you going to be using kind of that knowledge now, and you're going to, because I suppose the idea was to have a bit of fun with it, but also maybe kind of get more business ventures out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a new product that we're looking at developing, so it's been a hugely beneficial learning exercise. But obviously going forward, we now know where the kind of the shortfalls are, and it's not really kind of feasible to expect to run large scale tracking like that on something as weak as a Raspberry Pi. So it was So
what was the setup then with the Raspberry Pi? Was it a Node.js app on like a Debian install?
Yeah, it was really, really simple. Yeah, so it was just I don't know what distribution of Linux it was. I think it was just, Linux? There's a specific one for Raspberry Pis, I believe. But we were just running like a simple Node script on there with a Bluetooth. There's a Bluetooth library that allows you to use a Bluetooth, a USB Bluetooth adapter. And it just kind of gives you a ping every time it picks up a message, and then we were sending that with Socket.io to a central server that was doing all the calculations to work out where. So we had the Raspberry Pis were literally just acting as detectors, so they'd pick up a signal. With Socket.io, they'd pass it off to a central server that we were using, and then on there is where we do all the calculations on as per like all the trilateration. So we could if we had a signal from a single beacon on 3 or more detectors, we could work out roughly where that was in the room.
That's so cool.
Which is really cool. Yeah. So we had 7 of these in the room, 6 of them shut down. So we couldn't really,
I mean, that's interesting that you say with like the Raspberry Pi, because I know they do a lot of like Python stuff, obviously like just kids learning the programming with that and stuff. And mate, I don't know, are you looking into like different languages then maybe to kind of like a bit lower level, like the C++s of the world, or
we've not really considered that, to be honest with you. It was just kind of because we had everything that we needed with Node, so we could use Socket.io, which is obviously really, really cool. So the whole ecosystem was there for us. But it might be worth us looking into alternatives such as, like you say, Python. But there's been a release today, I think, of a new Raspberry Pi, which is a little bit more powerful. So I think we're going to get hold of a couple of those and see how they handle.
I love Raspberry Pis. That's
really
so
good
cool.
fun. Yeah, I want to do something myself with one, but I haven't got a clue what.
It's trying to think of an idea, isn't it? Because I remember I bought one, and I'm just like, when it first came out, I'm like, I don't really know what to do with it though. You know,
Yes,
like
exactly.
you know, you can set up as like a little MAME set, kind of little arcade box and stuff.
That would be a cool idea.
It is a cool idea like that.
An
And I've seen
emulator or something.
Yeah, I mean, I did some things like that, and then I was like, people were making like arcade machines out of them and things, and it was really cool. But I just don't have the dedication to do that. I kind of get bored easy. So maybe I really should kind of think of a project and then really apply to it.
Yeah, I need to. That's the thing. Is for me, it's getting the kind of the inspiration to actually do something. I'm kind of lacking in that at the moment.
How's work's going on? Like on top of kind of that stuff on Friday, like what you've been working on.
It's going really, really good. Just working on the standard kind of apart from all the stuff for the Newcastle event, like all the location stuff. All our apps are written in Backbone, so obviously been doing a lot of Backbone. Outside of work, I've been working on a project. I think I mentioned it about 6 months ago that it was working on for this sailing company over in Corfu.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, just putting a little app together in Ionic, which Ionic, for those people that don't know, is kind of a way of writing JavaScript apps and package them up for native Android and iOS. So it uses Cordova and Angular and pretty much Cordova and Angular. So I've been working on that. I've kind of, because I hadn't touched that in about 4 months, but with the kind of the sailing season about to kick into gear in the next couple of months, I've been trying to kind of spend a bit more time in that and get that wrapped up. But yeah, it's all going good. I had a look at some React tutorials yesterday because I've not really played with React too much yet. So sat and watched a few videos on React yesterday, which was very interesting.
Nice. Are you looking to use that in a future project?
I've got no kind of. No, there's no plans currently to use it in a future project, but I think it's one of those things that I should learn it because it is kind of
good. I mean, again, it's like good to look at the landscape of everything.
It is, yeah.
I think because it's funny because now obviously the JavaScript world has become so big. There's obviously it's kind of spread out, and there's a lot of different areas now, a lot of different innovation.
Yeah,
that you see a lot of noise and stuff from the React community because it's quite a vocal one with Facebook and things like that.
Yeah.
But it is good to just see all really. Like looking into all these things. Like I've been looking into like Cycle.js. Which is like observables, and I got that word out eventually.
You got there in the end,
and it's these kind of ideas of like functional reactive programming, and it's a really cool event stream kind of thing. And I mean, could you imagine when Brendan Knight made JavaScript that he'd be thinking, oh yeah, people are going to be setting this up on like a little small, this Raspberry Pis, and then be able to interface it with a Bluetooth connector, and this is the thing where it's become now where the language has really exceeded kind of any expectations. I suppose that's what happens with all languages, really. I mean, I suppose like Rasmus didn't think that PHP was going to become that and all this. So, but it is kind of interesting how these languages spread out, and that you've really, it's good to take influences even in the same language, kind of in different areas of it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember like one of the first things I ever did in JavaScript, like about 15 years ago. It was like the most amazing thing in the world to me. Do you know the pop-up boxes you used to be able to do, and you used to be able to move the OK button to close it every time the mouse cursor got over. And to me, that was like the most amazing. Well, it's still is to this day the most amazing use of JavaScript that's ever existed.
The most practical use case.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Oh, and something else that I should talk about. It's not really kind of dev related, but it's kind of what I guess it could be. Have you seen this Leap Motion controller that you can get for computers like Macs and PCs?
No,
it's basically like it's a real kind of weird concept. Like I'd heard of it before, but do you know I've got an Oculus on pre-order?
Yes,
it was like someone put a video together, or sorry, Leap Motion have kind of made their software a lot better. So to describe what it is, it's a little box that sits in front of your computer. It's got two hidden cameras in it, and it basically tracks where your hands are. So you can wave your hands over it and interact with your PC or your Mac, just using your hands, kind of hovering over this thing. So it can work out gestures, like if you've got 5 fingers out, or if you're moving your hand, or if you're rotating your hand and stuff. It can work out exactly where your hand is. So someone put together a really cool Oculus demo, where they'd actually put one of these on the front of the headset.
All right.
The head-mounted display, and then it was visualizing your hands inside the world just by this camera looking at your hands, which I thought was one of the coolest things ever. So I got myself one of these Leap Motions because I thought it'd be cool for when the Oculus does turn up. It was like 35 quid. It's it's really, really like even just using it on your Mac. There's a load of different apps that you can play with it. There's for instance, there's like Cut the Road. You know the iOS game Cut the Road.
Yes.
There's that, and there's just lots of nice.
How
things.
easy? Have you looked at like the development tools for it and things?
Yeah, they actually have a JavaScript API for it. So I'm thinking of trying to do something with that. But the whole kind of package, like it's just really kind of nice, and it's just fun seeing new ways of doing things and
new interactions. That's
exactly, and it's completely gimmicky, and it's not practical to use in the real world. Like I've got it set up on my laptop so that I can like switch to my next window on the Mac, and I can kind of go to Expose and Application Switcher and all that kind of stuff by using hand gestures, which is kind of cool. But
it's so Minority Report, and it's so badass.
Exactly, yeah, it's completely unnecessary, but it's just kind of cool. But
the thing is, you say that, but like, I mean, I suppose 20 years ago, thinking of touching a monitor screen, and like kind of we use now iPads. I mean, like fingerprint scanners.
Yeah,
like we use these things that we kind of think of as gimmicky and kind of like, oh, they're not going to need it in the mainstream.
Yeah. Now
they've become a real thing. So I say you can eat your words. In 10 years, you'll be like, you're at the forefront.
A pioneer.
Of it. Exactly. The pioneer of this technology.
Yeah. I'd like to. Yeah. So they've got the JavaScript API. So I'd like to develop something kind of like I've been meaning to play with 3JS for a long time as well, so I think that would be kind of cool if I could do something with the Leap Motion and 3JS, and even if I could take it further and put it into Google Cardboard or something like that, then that'd be pretty cool. But it's just trying to find the time to fit in everything that I want to do.
Day job and that, and then obviously girlfriend, etc.
Yeah.
It all mounts up.
Exactly, yeah. But so I think that about covers me. Sorry, I've kind of run away with the show for the first.
No, man, not at all. Not at all. How you doing, Mickey?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, obviously talking about Raspberry Pi, I was sort of reading an article the other day about, don't be too quick to go out and buy one because the competitors are really good now as well.
Yeah. See, that's it, isn't it? Because Raspberry Pis must have started off this trend. But then it is now the competition is obviously rife for...
Yeah, it was incredible, like looking at the spec on some of them now, it's insane. But, I think like the one I was looking at was the Beagle Bone or something like that. I think it was like $30 and... the spec was insane, so it might be worth checking that out as well.
Okay, yeah, that'd be worth looking at. I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, definitely.
And what is that? Is that essentially exactly the same thing?
Yeah, just like for like competitor really. But I think same again. You can run like Debian, Ubuntu, Android on it, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the Raspberry Pi 3 now, and as well as this, I think they all ship with like Bluetooth and Wi-Fi out the box now, don't they? So
yes, they do. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty impressive. But but in terms of other gadgets, do you see the new Google robot that they sort of unveiled in the last few days?
Oh, is this one they had the video for where he was beating it up with a broomstick?
Yeah, I was just going to say
what?
I was like sat there watching it. I mean, I was thinking like Terminator. I was thinking you do not want to.
Don't mess with this man.
Wait till they get all AI'd up as well.
Yeah, exactly. They just kept smacking him over with this broom, like to demonstrate how he can like get back up.
Oh, right. So it's like it's the symbol. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down.
And the thing with the box as well, I thought that was really fun to watch as well. So he puts like a box down. It's got VR codes all over it. Are they VR? No, what are those? QR codes.
Yeah.
QR codes all over it so it can see where it is. So it puts this box down. The robot starts walking towards it and like bends over to pick it up. This guy kind of picks up the box, moves it.
That's just mean.
So this thing recognises that the box is now moved, stands up, walks towards this box, and then the guy that moved the box before gets a broom handle and shoves this thing like a few steps back. And like to its credit, it kind of took steps back to steady itself and then came forward and picked up the box. It was awesome. Really cool.
And really, really mean to all robots everywhere,
Yeah.
Just robot cruelty. Wow.
Exactly, yeah. So when AI comes in, that bloke's going to get
exactly, yeah, exactly. He's going to look at that YouTube video, go on YouTube, all these robots, be like, who was this guy with the broomstick?
I must avenge myself.
There's a movie plot right there.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So what have you been up to, Mickey?
So I don't really think I've spoken to you since I got back from the PHP conference.
Yeah,
right?
We need to. What's the recap on?
Oh, yeah, we had a bit, didn't we, Mick?
We did, yeah. We had, like you say, we don't really drink much anymore, do we?
Back from the bar with like 20 mojitos.
Yeah. But we were pretty tame that night, really. We had a few drinks. It was a good catch up, though, wasn't it? So, the conference was really good.
What was the highlight? What kind of talks stood out to you?
Well, okay, so I think I told you, and I think I might have put a thing on Twitter, but definitely like the talk about microservices. I've really kind of inspired me actually, because I know I've heard you talking about it before, and you saying, it's a bit of a buzz term, and but yeah, I guess for me it was like something like it was a real light bulb moment, and that really made a lot of sense. And I think probably because of the project I'm doing at the minute, where there is a lot of really, I don't know what the best way to describe it is, like components to the product itself, which makes complete sense to split them up. But I really like the idea. I mean, obviously the guy was very passionate about the topic, and he was just saying, look, if you do this, if you use microservices, then suddenly life becomes a lot easier. Well, not easier, but more organized. You can have these teams that are more autonomous.
Yeah.
And they've literally got this little service that they deal with, or big service that they deal with. But rather than dealing with this huge monolith,
they can have their own rate, I'm guessing, their own rate of change, and it's that kind of, different stacks, different languages based on the problems.
Yeah, but the idea that, you see, obviously, if you're using something like HTTP and REST, then, if you've got these endpoints, then really, what's it matter if you've got one microservice that's written in Java or Python or PHP, and that, that
power
really
in that is
cool.
so cool.
Yeah, very cool. And, so yeah, that was very good. I mean, the guy who talked about it, I can't remember his name. That's a bit harsh. But like,
we'll put it in the show notes. I'll find. You send me a link to the conference, because I know that they put all the videos online, don't they? A couple of months later.
3 or 4 months later. But yeah, he was. His talk was focused a little bit on is it Sam Newman's book, who I've bought now, and so now I've been plowing into that. But again, I think I was telling you earlier, but. Yeah, I've only read like the first few chapters, but he really talks passionately about microservices, and one of the things he talks about is the idea of software architects, and how he really doesn't like that term, because he doesn't see that as what we do at all. And in fact, really, if you think of an architect, he really kind of takes a blueprint and he'll build something that's really kind of fit for purpose for that time. So someone needs a house, they build that house at that time. You wouldn't really get someone come and think, well, I'm going to build this house, but I'm going to provision in the fact that someone's going to add on a swimming pool in the loft at some point. Why would you do that? So really you're saying, well, that's not really what we do. We're actually more like town planners. And, we don't really, all we want to say is, well, okay, I'm just going to kind of stand back and watch this house being built, but I want to make sure that they don't, go and put
go crazy, don't go completely off course on things. And
exactly. And I want to make sure that then, in the future we can do other stuff, that kind of thing. And again, I think for me, like suddenly when I was in full-time employment, software architect was the role that I was hoping to lead to. Was something
it sounds very cool, doesn't it? Software gardeners. I'm a gardener of software. I'm a software architect. I'm, these kind of buzzy, cool terms,
Yeah, exactly. But I think he talks about it a lot better than I do. I don't think I've really put it across very well. But yeah, it's very, very interesting. And just the whole topic of microservices, I think, is really interesting. And I take on your point, there are a lot of these buzz terms.
I think it's anything, though, because I remember you saying that this year that you joked, DDD kind of got a bit of a slating by certain people. And it's funny because it's like anything. Like, what happens is people, it's this cycle where you get a cool new thing, and it's like a toy, it's like this hip new toy, and everyone's got to have it, so everyone's using it and everyone wants to use it, and they'll use it everywhere, and I want to bring it everywhere with me, this is my awesome toy and I want to bring it everywhere with me, I'm going to take it everywhere, and then you get bored of it, and then you start hating it, or you see other people doing it and you're like, well, why do they put it there, and why are you using it there, and things like this. And that's like anything, though. And the trouble is you have to use things in moderation. Like, nothing's a silver bullet in technology ever. But we always, I'm villain to this, because I say like, oh, React's awesome, and it's great, but it's not the silver bullet. Like, it's not going to solve everyone's problem. In fact, it actually generates more problems, like different problems, in some cases, it may solve some, but bring in others. And that's exactly like anything, like DDD, like, DDD for certain use cases is amazing, but people try and put it in everything, or they try and use it in a program, in a a problem domain that they don't need it in, and it becomes massive bloat and a complete waste of time. And it's interesting, and like say with microservices, because microservices, great idea. This idea of autonomous system, autonomous teams, and this whole idea that, you'll be able to split these up and have different rates of change. And, that's kind of like the bounded context in DDD where you separate and you actually, even if you do split up your system into different ubiquitous languages, and you have, different data stores and different everything for everything, sake, because you don't want this massive monolith. But sometimes a monolith wins. Like, there is balance in all, I find, where, I think DHH actually pushes a lot. The guy for the Ruby on Rails guy, he pushes a lot for the monolith, because he's like, well, it still works, and it's, because everyone keeps pushing for the other now. It goes through these things where people are like, no, it has to be split up completely. It's like, well, actually, no, it doesn't. And I think, it's finding that balance, and it's not an exact science for that. But I do agree, the idea of microservices and just SOA, service-oriented architecture, this concept of being able to essentially, have a problem and solve that one problem, and provide a public API for that to your teams, essentially, and maybe you have a couple of maintainers on that project, and even if it's a small team, you can still have like a single maintainer for that one project who deals with it and treats it almost like as it's an external service. And the beauty in that is that you then don't know the internals of it, so you can't try and use it in a way and exploit it and become, it just becomes a big ball of mud. It just becomes unusable because, you've just kind of just taken advantage of the fact, you can only use its public API. So it's a simple, input, black box output, and things like that. Yeah. And it's got a clear problem it's solving.
Yeah.
Trouble is, splitting these up into those clear problems can be very hard, I feel.
I agree.
I think that to me, like, thinking of it now, would be the hardest part, is to try and find those boundaries and what really is a good service, because, people have, the simple services are like, I would have like a mail service, like an email service, and I'll have maybe image services, and I'll have like a payment service and things. But you've got to be very specific and quite, it's very context specific and domain specific on what's going on. But that is the thing, is the kind of, I feel what then happens is the problems occur and the pain happens because they do the wrong kind of separations. They split it up maybe too much or too little, or in the wrong direction. They cut it up in the wrong way, and then they get the pain from it.
I 100% agree. And I think there are edge cases, like, for example, if you've got two different microservices, but they're both feeding from one database, and have you really decoupled as much as you think you have?
Yeah, see, this is interesting because my builder, we have moved to more kind of, I wouldn't call them microservices, I'd call it more different systems and completely different applications, though they do share the same database. We have split them up into different schemas, so they share the same database but have different schemas, which is essentially different worlds that they live in, the schemas do. But they can cross that boundary, but it's very explicit if you're crossing into, say, another person's database. So it's possible, but it's also kind of frowned upon. Now, ideally, you want them in separate databases, but the trouble is that adds overhead of maintenance, and it adds overhead of system, and I know you have things like Puppet and all these automation systems, makes things a lot easier, provisioning systems, but there is a lot more overhead on adding microservices and these separations because of, you have to keep these things up to date now. You have to choose a stack. I mean, the great thing is, it's like, oh, great, I get to use a new stack for this, but then sometimes you're like, well, do you really need to use a new stack? I always sound so pessimistic, but I always think like it's really cool, but it's also, you have to kind of weigh it up and be a bit more, use it for power, take the power of it, like, yes, this is brilliant in this context, and you can see, in another way it may not work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the other talk I listened to was like, the title was something like All the Cool Kids, and it was talking about how we do feel threatened, like a lot of new things coming in, if it's, I don't know, either a design pattern or new framework or what have you. And our reaction is that we feel, we should be doing this because the new things come out. Especially then if we hear like a big name connected to that. So, for example,
like you see a Facebook or
Facebook or a Google, or even an individual like, Martin Fowler or something. Yep. It just makes you think, well, I should be doing this.
I'm not clever if I'm not using this. Absolutely.
But actually, even those big, boys get it wrong. Do you know what I mean? So they might join a fad that actually in a few years' time.
They're like, so the problems that Facebook are dealing with happen to maybe 10 or 20 websites or, you know, businesses in the world.
Yeah.
Like the curve, I think it was Anthony Ferreira, he posted, like, you know, where we look at this, you know, and we complete, you know, with our systems and with our companies, we always compare to, like, because obviously they're the most vocal and they provide the most resources to produce all these good open source projects and things. But they're dealing with problems that we never will have.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean, we wish we will. Like, you kind of wish you get that. But it's this bell curve. I don't know what it's called. It's a bell. No, it's not a bell curve, but it's just this, you know, it's a logarithmic in that it just goes, logarithmic, you know, where it's just n squared, essentially, where it just gets higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And they're dealing with this incredibly, you know, like, just amazing place they're at. You know, where they're having to deal with problems and they're dealing with insane things and they're making languages to solve that and new patterns and things like this. And they're having to use all these kind of they're having to break the mold and do a lot of research into things, whereas we sometimes mostly don't need to. But it's nice to use new things and it can be beneficial. And again, it's that whole, the secret sauce is that you have to try and find a balance.
Absolutely.
That's not really secret sauce at all. It's very, very relative to the problem.
I completely agree. I mean, the things I did take away from the conference personally was, you know, well, the same things I always do, kind of like more testing, more version control. The microservices thing did hit home, but also with the microservices thing connected to that is this whole idea that because you've got these different systems, that your error reporting is all done to one central place.
That coordination and all that, because that's the thing as well, like logging, error logging, reporting, as you say, needs to be.
Yeah. And it made me think something you two were talking about this the other week. But is that something you two both do, that you log errors in all in one place, or do you have them scattered all over the place in different logging solutions?
So, do you want to go Fraser first?
I can't really speak again for long because we've not implemented the error logging that we were chatting about before yet, and I don't really have any hand in the back end logging, so I can't really talk on that subject, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
That's all right. So at my builder, we use a lot. So Gavin, the CEO, my boss, he is great. Like, he is great in that we have so many different error. Like, he has installed. Because you get lots of free trial, like not free trials, but lots of, you know, like the free levels of these things, you know, like we've got the Datadogs and all this, and, you know, we have paid for some of the others, but we essentially, you know, you'll try something out and you'll just keep it running because it's nice to have that running. Like but then, as you say, like, and this is what I found as being an Ewok when we did these, that we each do a week of like being the go-to person for errors and things like that in the company and like dealing with problems and, you know, kind of helping the tech team. It was kind of trying to coordinate all these things and this logging, and we have got like HipChat is integrated and hooks into a lot of them, where, you know, a lot of things are just feeding into that, where, you know, we'll get the notifications kind of summarized there, and then you'll have to go to certain other areas. Datadog's been very good for that, where we've pumped in a lot of information there that feeds into things like paper trail. So we've got a lot of areas. Like, I would say we've probably got about 3 places where you can get aggregates of all of the problems, and then you can filter into that, which I think's fine. I think for me that's okay. Like, I know where to look for these certain bits. The thing is, I mean, the trouble is sometimes you can have too much data and it can get overwhelming. Yeah. And we've actually found that one problem we've had at this time still is actually a JavaScript issue at the moment. So when we first started rolling out JavaScript tracking and error tracking, we used something called Errorception, and we weren't. The thing with JavaScript, obviously it's on the client, so essentially you're dealing with the browser's problems on that client. You know, you're not controlling the space, as opposed to if it's on your server. If there's a bug on that server, that's your problem. When sometimes, you know, their browsers may just be balked, they may have malware, adware, all this crap on it. So we would get, you know, like really crappy sometimes errors and things that wouldn't make much sense. Typical ones like Vodafone, you know, they would do like injecting certain things into the page and things like that, horrible stuff on their web browser, you know, when people, you know, used it on their web browser. So things like that, which you'll get errors for, and these became like red herrings. You see a lot of noise, and I found that, and we also get this now with it's a real error. Like, it's a very interesting one. So what happens is if if say with OAuth Tour 2, sorry, that you you log in, you get an authentication token. Sorry, you authenticate, you get a token back. You use that token. Till you get a 401. 401 means unauthorized. You then do essentially a new token. You go and ask log in and do that again. 401s are an error. Like in the status codes, they are an error. Like they're in the group of errors, unauthorized. Yeah. So is 400, which is invalid content. But we use those for validation. Now, validation, is that an error? Like, is that something I should be alerted to? So we're still kind of working this. So we get a lot of noise with these 401s and 400s come through still as being errors. And we have found that kind of, well, I know personally I found that's quite noisy. And I think the trouble is errors, what you want to do is you want to make them very much focused. Like it's too much data can actually be bad for you. You're better off sometimes having not as much data and it being like, oh, wow, okay, whoa, this has happened, because you just become numb to it. It just becomes like, oh, these are errors, they're fine. But you shouldn't be treating them like that. So we're still having to think, kind of have a think about how we're going to be solving that issue. But yeah, I would say JavaScript errors of things for me will have been a hard one. Yeah.
What about in terms of sort of like your resource spikes and stuff like that for monitoring that? Is that something you guys do as well?
So we have so Datadog. So there's a couple of things. So you use stuff like New Relic. New Relic's a great one to start off with because it's a simple, you normally in your package installer. All you do is you just go in, you install it, you set it up, and it starts monitoring your memory, your disk space, disk usage, network usage, processes running, and then it also integrates into things like, Nginx, Apache, PHP, and it can do a lot of clever things there. That's great, with also exceptions, things like that. We also then have stuff like Datadog. Datadog gets a bit more cooler because you can actually push in metrics to it. So we have like statistics and stuff, and like say we have queues running, like email queues, and what we do is we pump in information, say kind of information such as, so we want to alert us if something is on the queue for longer than 5 minutes. Like we have a heuristic that we know typically something shouldn't be on that queue, an email queue, to be sent over 5 minutes or a minute or whatever. Yeah. So if it gets over a minute and it's still on the queue, like an email's on a queue, we get alerted for it. So we get pinged about that. Oh, there's something wrong then. So we pile in with all this information. Like we've got counts on it. If it over, like if the email counts over 1,000, if like the message counts over 1,000 on certain things, if we haven't had, if it's taken this much longer to do something, then there's an issue and things like that. So there's a lot of information we have. Datadog does some really good stuff with that and allows you to, essentially what it does is it runs on a cron job where it just keeps searching, but pushes it up to Datadog. Then we say to it, give me the average of whatever happens in this time, and if it's not meets this threshold, alert me. So that type of stuff's really great because it allows you then to not worry about that. I know that we've had you've had an interesting evening with what would be nice is to have something like, like 500s and things like that, where like pingdom and things like this, where you can just say, look, I kind of set and forget, like you alert me if there's a problem. Here's my base cases, and if it doesn't meet these, please tell me, like at any time, or have like set levels. I would definitely recommend, if you're getting more into the server stuff, if you care, like if you really want to kind of, worry about this, is to look into getting New Relic set up, getting Datadog set up. Things like Paper Trail's good. These are things that a log. They're all essentially just logging, but different aspects.
Well, I wanted to have a play with the Elk stack.
What's this?
So this is so it's like Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana.
I remember. Yeah, I looked into this ages ago. It does look cool. It looks very cool. That actually.
Yeah, well, it seems like everyone's using. Well, again, everyone, all the cool kids. But yeah, they talked about this a lot. In fact, I went to an Elk stack talk the previous PHP conference, and then it sort of came up again a lot in this conference. So. And I guess, to be honest with you, I think one of the guys was talking and saying, look, you don't need this if you're running, a small brochure site. To be honest with you, do you really need it? But if you're running big web applications, then yes, you do.
Yeah, I think custom logging is really important. I would say personally, if I was you, I would look at the ones that are already out there at the moment. like free ones that you can get, and just set up and then use, like, because these are used by massive companies as well. If you want custom logging, like that's understandable in certain use cases, but I would find in a generic use case, especially to start off with, kind of just to kind of, the barrier to entry is so much nicer because you can just get it installed, and once it's installed, then it's just kind of set and forget, and you could be like, oh yeah, I had this installed, that's great. I can start playing with it and stuff. Whereas things like using Logstash and Combat and all these things, you kind of have to know, and you want to apply a lot more info at the offset.
I must admit, it didn't look like just run, install.
It's not the nice, because you have to still like all the information that you're piling into it, you still have to set up yourself.
Right.
Because essentially it's the Elasticsearch obviously is your data store for it. Logstash is the actual thing that's running, which allows it to kind of process. So you passing its stuff into Logstash, which is then storing it into Elasticsearch, and then being able to do things on that. And then the Kambana, or I think is a Ruby kind of GUI for it. Yeah, Logstash is on its own, not very pretty. But I would recommend, but I would definitely say look at that. But I would recommend setting up on your server, your DigitalOcean box you've got now. Just set up New Relic and set up Datadog and start playing with that stuff. And if you find that you're missing something, then look at another thing. Like, the great thing is so many options out there. They all offer free, like, trials, or they offer free, like, like if you have under like 20,000 hits, and things like these, which, at the first maybe you will, that'd be great, and then you'd be able to have the problem of eventually going up before, beefing that up. And like things like Track.js, Reception, all these things, I would definitely recommend checking out the free ones, like free offerings first, and seeing where you go from there.
Oh, nice one, man. Yeah, we'll do. So anyway, how about you? What have you been up to? Anything?
I finished. I was deploying some stuff last week, which went really well, which was good. It's always nice to get something deployed.
Been blogging lots, right?
I've been blogging lots. Yes, I do my.
Yeah, I was just looking at one of your blogs, the how to reintroduce the blink tag.
Oh hell yeah! So that was this morning's one. I decided like. So actually, one thing this weekend, yesterday evening. AmyClifton.com. So my girlfriend, so for Christmas last year, I think a couple of years ago actually, I was like, I think I'm going to get Amy a domain. I bought her decent gifts as well. Don't worry. Like, this was just an extra thing, because if I'd bought her a domain and that was it, I probably wouldn't be saying I have a girlfriend at this time. Exactly. It would be a winner or not, But, so I said, Amy, I've got your domain. So she's like, what is a domain first? So we worked out that, But anyway, so now she's got her own website set up, amyclifton.com. And I set up, yesterday night, I set up her GitHub profile, a simple, GitHub Pages site, and like all she was doing, it is amazing now with GitHub Pages, like GitHub, essentially, you can just do it all in the browser. It's like back in the free webs days and things like GeoCities, because essentially it's just like a not a WYSIWYG, but you've got the text editor in there and you're just doing commits. You can upload files now in GitHub. So I'll put it in the show notes, but she was uploading random GIFs that I'd made on my iPhone, like throughout the couple of weeks and stuff, and just random stuff. And it was really fun, and like her learning kind of how to web program and stuff. And it was interesting, like trying, because she was like, I want to move it over there. And I'm like, well, it doesn't quite work like that. And working out like the limitations of the web platform, it's really interesting to see how someone thinks about it. And you're like, we just come, accustomed to certain things. Like, no, that's not possible. But she's like, well, why not? And I'm like, okay, well, now I'm going to have to explain this. I'm thinking, why is that not possible again? We just take it for granted. So it was really interesting and a lot of fun to like kind of teach someone who's a non-programmer kind of basic HTML stuff. Yeah. She's now got her own website that is hilarious, and it's like it's got marquee tag. I'm hoping we're gonna add the blink tag, because I was playing thinking, I'll add the blink tag in as well. I'll show her this, because I thought that everyone needs to know. Back in the day that was our go-to. Blink tag, marquee. Exactly. It's the golden standard. But it didn't work, and I'm like, oh no, this isn't good. So this morning before work, I just decided I'm just going to code up a quick implementation in JavaScript, and it was just another blog. I just put it on my blog, and so I'm going to hopefully this next weekend, if she still is interested in becoming a web programmer, because everyone cool should do, absolutely, is get the blink tag going on some like GIFs, because that would definitely give someone an epileptic shock. I am amazed how the blink tag got in. Like, it's so bad, like for surely like web accessibility and things like this. And the same with Marquee, to be fair. But yeah, so anyway, other than that, in my own time, I've been doing quite a few things actually in my own time. So one of them is like algorithms. So that's been the couple of things I've been blogging on, enclosure and things like that, with like insertion sorts, selection sorts, and bubble sorts and things. But algorithms are interesting, and like, you know, people have like, do they have a practical use case? You know, because eventually, are you just going to be using someone's library instead? You know, if you end up having to write one of these algorithms in a language, you're doing it wrong, because there's definitely a library that's done it 1,000 times better, you know, that's either a level down where it's written in C, you know, as opposed to the higher level language you're using, or it's been more optimized and things like that. But it's very interesting learning these algorithms and like how they solve the problems, you know, especially sorting algorithms, which you would think is a very trivial, easy thing to do. But actually, there's so many ways of doing it, and there's, you know, asymptotic time, the O log n, you know, and things like this. So one of the things, though, is the algorithms, like visualizing them. And there's a couple of really good YouTube videos I put in the show notes of like the visualizations of the different sorting algorithms and how they work. And I found that was a really good way of learning how the different algorithms actually, like how they work under the hood, is, you know, by the way they visualize, the way they can be visualized. So I'll put that in the show notes. And another one is Rick Hickey. And so this is, again, going into the closure stuff that I'm quite obsessed with at the moment. Rick Hickey is the creator of Closure, and his talks are amazing. And I was able to, online, I found on GitHub, some guys been really nice to actually, I find that I like the talks, but I also like reading as well. So the mixture of the two is great, where he's actually done talk transcripts for quite a few different people's talks, but he's done them pretty much for all of Rick Hickey's ones. So that's a great resource where you're able to, you know, as he's going on, you know, because I've probably listened to a couple of his talks multiple times. And other than that, I've also been, finally actually, is, so we had Will Thomas, my designer friend who I work with at my builder a couple of weeks ago on, and he mentioned someone called Frank Camiro. And he lent me a book that was called The Shape of Design, and I started reading it at the weekend, and I listened to watched a couple of the Frank Camiro's videos on Vimeo and YouTube, and this guy's just amazing. Like, he's a designer, and it's really interesting to kind of think about stuff outside of programming and kind of get influences from other areas, because I think I come too obsessed with just code, whereas like looking into design stuff, and this guy looks at the web in such a different way, obviously being a designer, but also he has such a different insight. But the parallel, like the contrast, but also the similarities are so kind of, it's very familiar, kind of what he's talking about, and you can relate it to what we do very easy. And I really recommend like The Shape of Design, the video, the actual talk he gave, but also the accompanying book that he wrote after the fact. It's online. You can actually order it online, or you can actually just read it online. And I definitely recommend checking those out. And that's that's pretty much my week in a nutshell.
Fantastic.
How's everyone's weeks looking? Is it a good week? What you currently working on, Fraser?
I'm back to working on the standard product at the office at the moment. So it's the online betting platforms for sports books. And yeah, so I'm cracking on with that. We've got we do monthly release cycles. So we are due to release our March one tomorrow. So that's going to go out with a load of nice new features. And we've got a list of other new features that we're developing for April at the moment. So it's kind of business as usual, to be honest.
That's cool. How do you kind of work that out then? Is there like a stop-off gap? You have like, these are the features we want to get done in this release window, and then you have a complete stop-off, or like say at this time now we've got a week till we have to release it, nothing else is going in?
Pretty much. Well, we kind of we work in monthly release cycles, as I said. So our project managers and product owners will have a chat with the client. The clients are all overseas, so they'll basically have meetings with them and decide what they want to put in. We'll suggest stuff as well. For instance, we'll go to them and say, "Oh, well, how about it can be something little, like at the moment on the bet slip. Every time you change scenes on the bet slip, if you're scrolled down the page and you've got a long bet slip, when you go onto the confirm page, it doesn't scroll you to the top, and it's to be honest, it would be nice if it would scroll you to the top. So our product owners have gone to them and said, "Oh, well, how about we develop this for you and what have you?" So it's a kind of a mixture between them suggesting and requesting things and us saying, "Oh, well, have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing this?"
Aiding them, kind of helping them along, kind of.
Exactly, yeah. So ultimately, the decisions come from the clients, so we don't do anything without them giving us the go ahead. So Yeah.
Did you find that a month's a good time? Would you feel it's maybe a bit too much, too quick?
No, I think a month's generally good because then you've got 2 sprints to work to in between. So we try and get them to sign off. I'm trying to push the project managers and the product owners to kind of get the sign off a little bit earlier.
Just sign offs on a feature being complete, or on an idea?
To get sign offs on work they'd like done for the next release. Because sometimes it can get to the point where they haven't given us the complete go ahead to something, and it kind of eats into our development time a little bit. But so I've tried pushing that to the product owners, but obviously they want to be as flexible with the customer as possible for kind of keeping the customer happy. Which is
it must be kind of seesaw kind of juggling act.
Yeah, it really is. So obviously we're trying to keep everyone happy while still trying to be able to develop to a proper cycle and get some good quality code out there. So once we've got the sign off for some work to do, we'll generally develop that over a couple of sprints. It could be anything. It could be huge features, or it could just be kind of minor pixel pushing and all that kind of stuff. So we've got a mixture this month of like some pixel pushing stuff and a couple of bugs that have been discovered. One at the moment that I'm trying to replicate. I've not been able to replicate.
Oh, I love it. Cannot replicate.
Oh, it's horrible. Because once I can replicate it, and once I can replicate it consistently, I think I know roughly what it's going to be. But it's almost it's impossible. It's like, even in terms of, okay, well, we think it's this, and then you write some code that kind of you think what it is. But if QA can't replicate it as well, then they can't sign it off in good conscience. So there's no point in us doing any work if we can't actually replicate the bug, which is a bit of an issue. But it's the client reported this bug, and it's something that happens sporadically.
That's the worst.
Exactly. He's seen it once or twice, and then like when you try and
is it a quite serious bug when it does happen?
No, not at all. Like it's basically
not too bad then. So it's not life threatening to the actual product if it.
Oh no, yeah, it's not gonna cause anyone to place bets they didn't think they were going to be placing. It's not going to cause people to not be able to place bets. But it's just it's a tiny little bug, but it's a really really annoying thing. And when the client reported it to us, we got back to him and said, okay, well, can you give us the steps like that?
Can you give me the place how to replicate this, please?
Exactly. And he said, it was 5:00 on Friday afternoon, so I don't really remember too well. So it was like,
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You've made my life so much easier, because it's not like there's infinite ways and combinations I can use this application to get into any state. Joy.
Yeah, so we kind of this goes back to login. So we grabbed the server logs for around the time that the issue occurred, to get all the responses that were sent around that time. So I went through a list of these logs within like a 5-minute period, and there were loads of them. But there was 2 that had errors in them. So I looked at the 2 errors there, and it turns out that
these server errors, weren't they? I guess
they weren't server errors, but they were the responses. But they were kind of errors suggesting that we hadn't passed all the information that the server was looking for. So it basically kicked it back and said, look, we haven't got enough information, so we can't fulfill your request. So there was 2 instances of these. I had a look at those, and then it turned out that it couldn't have been either of those, because the situation where these 2 errors cropped up can only happen when the user's logged in, and the client told he wasn't logged in at the time.
So you're back to square one again.
Exactly.
That's another thing that's horrible, is when you think you've got something, you're grabbing onto it, and you want to still believe, even when you now know, you're like, I want to believe it's something to do with that, because it's the only thing that makes logical sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I followed this trace, so I got the log, and I said, okay, well, if this is the case, then we're going to follow this process through the code. So I got to there's like a case statement, which is horrible itself, but there's a case statement that it kind of came down to, and I was like, I found it. This is exactly what it is. And then I kind of injected the response into this case statement, and lo and behold, it wasn't that. So it's kind of, I had 4 hours of investigation.
Debugging.
Yeah, and then I got back to them and said, or not got back to the client, but got back to the product owner and said, look, I've been looking at this for 4 hours, not been able to replicate it once. Can we have a word with QA, see if they can do anything to replicate it? Because in the meantime, I can't really afford to waste any more time on this thing that I can't replicate. So I did a couple of other things instead.
That's actually one thing I was going to ask. So at the beginning of the month, you get in kind of this is what we want them to do. Like, I'm guessing the product owner has already decided what you're going to do, or do you have a lot of say in what you're going to be doing for that month?
No, not at all. Yeah, it's all down to the product owner. We have kind of sprint planning meetings and stuff, so we will sit down and we'll give estimates for all the bits of work that they'd like to be in that sprint. And then obviously, if we don't have the resource to do everything, if the list of requirements is way too high, then we have to get back to the client and say, okay,
that's it. You kind of got but obviously, I guess the product owner is on your side for
exactly. That's a good thing, because I've not worked in a company before where there is a product owner who is
it's really interesting.
Client. So it's really good. And it's nice to have. Sorry, I went completely off track before, didn't I? So we'll get the list of requirements, and then we'll get them drawn up in Redmine, which we use for our issue tracking. And they'll be assigned to, or they'll be flagged as ready for development, and they're assigned to the developer that's going to be working on that. And we try and write the specs in a BDD manner, so it's kind of like given this. So the idea is that we can take the exact same spec that we're given to develop to, we can develop to it to a T, and then when we pass it over to QA, they can use the exact same spec to do the testing on that item, so that we know that we've got a solid reference point for the developer and for QA. So it generally works quite well. Every now and again, obviously, stuff crops up where.
Do you have urgent bugs that you just have to fix? Kind of hot fixes, or has that not happened? Like in the
we do. This thing I'm looking at the moment, actually, that I've not been able to replicate, they're wanting that to go out as a hot fix. So this release is going out tomorrow, which is the March monthly release. The hot fix that I'm working on at the moment is this bug that I couldn't replicate yet. So they want that to go out as a hot fix in about a week's time or something. So in an ideal world, it wouldn't happen, but in a real world.
Yes, this is the thing. You have to kind of deal with it, don't you? Where you need something out there,
yes.
ASAP. And because you have that whole, so you do your first sprint, and then halfway through, who gets to know kind of the progress? So only the product owner, or do you also tell the client?
We also tell the client.
What's going on?
So after about 2 weeks into the monthly development cycle, we'll give the client what we call a BAT build, which is basically business acceptance test build. So this is stuff that we've developed. Our QA signed it off. It's not the full thing, but it's just kind of something to give them a taste, so they know what
direction you go in and things like that.
Exactly, yeah, because they've got their own QA team as well, so they have to sign stuff off before anything goes live. So we do our QA, they do QA on the work that we've done. And then once we pass it and they pass it, then it can actually go out to production. We'll give them a bit like a kind of a halfway house build, which is just kind of so they're not getting bombarded with everything right at the end of the month. So
that's it. And also, I suppose they give you feedback that you can then tweak on in the next sprint, as opposed to it being a complete wasted kind of venture for the month.
Exactly, yeah. And obviously they know the business better than anybody, so they're able to look at all the different kind of edge cases and what have you. And it keeps it. It keeps it a very stress-free process, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because Q's and QA, because I've never worked in a place with QA, and it's quite.
Do you not have QA at My Builder?
We don't. We are I suppose for us, we kind of test our own stuff, and then we have we have peer reviews and that kind of thing. We don't have people set out who just do the QA kind of thing. So what is their job then? Their role is just to test the product, I'm assuming.
Exactly, yeah. So at a base level, so they'll when we've developed a ticket, we will change the status to ready for testing, and we'll assign it over to QA. So we've got a QA manager, and we've got 3 QA engineers.
Wow!
So they're
team.
Yeah, they're really good. They're not kind of just sitting there clicking buttons and stuff. They're kind of knowledgeable enough to go into the web into Chrome Inspector and kind of look at the API calls and make sure that stuff's coming back that should be coming back, and make sure that we're passing all the correct fields and everything. So they're quite technical. So at a very base level, they're going through the user story. So it'll be kind of like, okay, when you click the login button, then when you enter username and password, then this should happen. So all the kind of like the standard regression testing. So they've got test steps to do everything. So they'll try and test everything.
Did you not have any automated kind of like Selenium stuff for these kind of things?
No, we don't. I actually looked at developing some of that, but it was a project that I had to come off to work on something else just because we were so busy. So I've kind of like half developed. We're using Cucumber.js.
Yep.
Cucumber.js and Appium and Selenium and stuff to actually physically go ahead and click on the user interface. So the idea was we'd put this together. It would be part of our build process. So it would do the major kind of functionality. So it would test logging in, make sure that you can log in. It would test kind of placing or adding a bet to your bet cart and then actually placing the bet. So you're not going to cover
not the full thing, but you can. It at least then allows you to show the whole story, like some
exactly,
happy paths and stuff with accept, because that's the user. The acceptance test is really kind of happy paths of does it do what I've actually asked? What it's meant to do, as opposed to kind of each intricate bit, kind of problems and things.
Exactly, yeah. And it's also written in a way that, because you've seen Cucumber syntax, presumably.
Yep.
Yeah, so you write it as you'd write a BDD test.
The
so
gherkin.
Given I'm on... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, sorry, gherkin syntax.
Amazing naming.
Yeah, so I've written all the code that kind of interacts with the major. When I click on a button with the ID of such and such, because the QA engineers are kind of competent enough to be able to go into Inspector and look at the ID of something, so we can kind of target. Yeah, so when I click ID login or hash login, I expect the login modal to appear. When I enter an incorrect username and password, I expect to see an error message, this, that, and the other. So they can go in and they can write it in natural English language, and then all the code that I've written then basically takes that and interprets that, and then physically goes and runs the test through Selenium or Appium.
Oh, nice. So you're hoping then that they get to actually write the tests.
Exactly,
so that automates their process a bit.
Exactly. And the kind of the golden scenario would be, or like the holy grail would be, we would take our BDD tickets from Redmine, and they would be able to copy and paste the kind of like, do you know that I was saying about how we write everything, all our specs in BDD kind of
the given when then.
Exactly, yeah. So we would literally be able to copy that, paste it into the test runner, and it would automatically go and test that for them. So there'd be a lot less that the testers would actually have to do.
Because I can imagine it must get quite a laborious task sometimes, having to go through making sure that they've done.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the holy grail, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done before it's kind of at that level.
Easier said than done.
Exactly, yeah. But that's kind of how it's going.
How about you, Mickey?
Well, I just download Datadog. Good.
I like it. That's nice.
It's like a one-line installation. That's amazing. So yeah, but now I need to work
New Relic
out
as well, because that's another one-line installation. It's so cool.
Not quite expensive though, for just a guy like me on my own. But
do you have to pay for Datadog?
Datadog, I think. I don't know. I've just signed up for a free trial.
New Relic has a free trial not a free trial. It also has a freemium.
Does it?
Yeah, it has a free tier.
Okay, I was trying to look, but yeah, so I'll have a little play with that, and but other than that, still working on my big freelance project, and I got a big demo on Thursday, which is always scary. But yeah, no, I've just been trying to, like I say, split that project up into like different services, so and try and practice what I preach. So yeah, looking like a busy one, but enjoyable. So,
very nice.
All good.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been another great episode. I always say that, and I remember once you said, "Mickey, how do you know?" And it's arrogant, yeah. Well, I feel it's been a good episode. I feel personally it's been a very good episode.
I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you've. I hope, Fraser, have you enjoyed it too?
I've had the time of my life.
Brilliant. Okay, well, we've all enjoyed it. Audience, I hope you've enjoyed it as much. Please leave your comments and stuff in the. Well, actually, in the comment section below, and also on iTunes. It'd be really cool to get some more.
Have we had any reviews on iTunes?
We haven't had any more reviews. We've had you, Justin, and a very nice person also. You know the two fake ones. It's pretty obvious when you look on it. You're like, those are the fake ones, and then there's like a legitimate one. It'd be really nice though, if people could rate us on iTunes, because it does help bump us up, kind of with other people and things.
Yeah.
Not that we want to replace you, audience. We just want to increase your audience. Anyway. Audience,
and we love you all.
We love you all, absolutely. Audience, speak to you next week. Goodbye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to 3 Devs and a Maybe. You can contact us at contact@3devsandamaybe.com or follow us on Twitter at 3 Devs and a Maybe.